All right.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Succurri webinar. Today, we've got, I think, what may be the most important conversation we've had to date. What's zero trust and why it's the only way to defend against weaponized AI? So this is all about security and IT security. So we're going to talk a little bit today with Grant and Andrew Ekstrom. Hello, gentlemen. Good to see you again.
Hello, sir.
They're going to go through, what is this zero trust thing? It sounds ominous, but important. We're going to talk about why, AI is out there kind of getting around existing security tools and what that really means and how this zero trust thing works at all levels. So if you're watching this, you're going to get a crash course in some pretty high level security stuff, which is kind of cool. And then go through a little bit of how to implement this in your business. And then as always, we've got a giveaway at the end, which I think is kind of a little bit different approach than we've had before. So excited to go through that. So let's get cracking. As always, just a little, little plug, a little bit about Succurri. Definitely, we offer a lot of different types of services. This is in the cybersecurity realm. We do have this YouTube channel, which some of you might see this on there. We also have on our website on our on-demand webinars. But go ahead and subscribe. We add subscribers every week, and like it, hit the bell. It'll tell you how to, or it'll keep you informed. So you don't have to attend all of our webinars necessarily. You could just watch our YouTube and keep track of that. We publish every month. So let's get going. So zero trust. Grant? What the heck is it?
The simplest way to describe it is basically you trust nothing, right? And you verify everything that's happening. And so I think we'll try to keep it as simple as possible today because zero trust is a methodology and a framework, not necessarily one specific tool. So zero trust can be in everything from workstations to cloud tenancies to software design. So we'll talk more about workstation zero trust, I think, for this call, just to kind of so we don't start hurting everyone's head or losing everybody because they get bored, one of the two.
Right away.
But yeah, so the sole purpose of zero trust is that it doesn't matter if it's good or if it's bad. If it hasn't been seen before, it won't allow it to run. And the reason why that's so important is because traditional antivirus systems are basically scanning everything that's happening and trying to stay up. And ultimately, if it misses something, that's where something goes when you have a security issue, something goes sideways. Versus the zero trust perspective is like, I don't care what it is, I'm not going to allow it to run unless you tell me specifically that I can go ahead and run this. And so that might be, if it's never seen Word before, it's not going to let Word to run. Everybody's like, hey, everybody runs Word, but it'll stop that if it's never been seen before, or a new version of software, things like that. But it'll make sure that there is a constant verification process happening that this is actually supposed to be in the environment. Hopefully that wasn't too technical.
Yeah, no, keep it simple. I'm sure we're going to get a little bit deeper because, I always like to quiz you guys on, hey, can you just keep this at like the third grade level that I'm at? Um, you're like all NIST 900 or what, I don't know what that is, but you have protocols and you have methodologies and you have controls, and if you're in and around the IT space and the tech, if you might know a little bit more detail about all that stuff, but basically you're talking about and I think Andrew summed it up well, the reactive versus proactive approach to security.
This is like the technical version of don't talk to strangers.
Right, see, now I get that,
Yeah.
right?
Hey, full circle.
Yeah. Don't talk to strangers versus, hey, everybody's your friend. And now I talk to this person and, oh, they're a little bit creepy. We probably should back ourselves away.
Yeah.
The zero trust is like, yeah, nobody's a friend.
Yep.
But what's interesting to me is then, and this is what I was thinking about, is like, is everything locked up? Is everything just kind of locked up? And I think the whole reason and you guys can tell the story, but the genesis of all this was the time you turned AI loose in your guys' business.
Well, it was definitely a pivotal point for us. When I unleashed Holy AI into the system, and it destroyed us. And we're in a secure environment. We had all the next generation, detection and response systems, and the only time that it actually anything that the alarm started going off was after it was too late, versus all the things that it had done prior to that we should have been able to see or stop. And so, yeah, so what you're seeing here is a basically it's called a kill chain. It's the process that when and this goes back to a previous webinar that we did about weaponized AI, but this is when I dropped a weaponized AI tool into our network, and within obviously 17 minutes, it had local domain access to our systems, and so basically had the keys to the kingdom. Like I said, alarms only started going off after it started exfiltrating information. So exfiltrating is when it grabs your data and starts sending it to a different location, and that's when we started seeing that's when all of our alarms started going off, even though it was happening long before then. So yeah,
So what you're saying is, I want to make this is an important thing. I think the last thing you said was you let AI into your network. Your alarms didn't go off until it was too late. Basically, is what you just
right,
said.
yeah. So the damage was already done at that point, and the AI was basically the AI had already hacked in, grabbed the data, and started sending it out. And then that's when the alarms triggered. So rather than being a proactive standpoint, it was very reactive. It was damage was done, data was gone, and there was nothing we could have done about it. So I guess the scary part about it is that if you think about that, the only reason why we saw it was because it started moving data around. Well, the system could have been in our network for days or weeks, and we would have never known that anything was going on because it hadn't started to move anything yet. And so that's pretty common for a lot of threats nowadays that are happening, that the threat actors are in the networks for potentially weeks or months looking for things. And if they're not moving the data, like they might be able to view the data and get it out a different way, but they're not moving it around, the alarms maybe don't go off. And so that was a real eye opener for us, was when we started going, okay, we have some of the best technology available in the IT space. I mean, we're talking big names that people use on a regular basis that are, configured by, to the best practices, and it still didn't do what it was supposed to. So like I said, for Andrew and I, that was kind of the eye opener of like, we need to do something different, because AI is a game changer in how security is going to need to be dealt with.
So, Andrew, what was your perspective? I can't remember. It's been a while since we did that other webinar. I can't remember. Did Grant tell you he was going to do this, or did you like freak out and see alerts and
I find that it's easier to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission.
Yeah, he told us he was going to do it. What scared me, Grant is a very like calm, steady person. Is he came to our ownership meeting after this was run, and he was visibly shaken. And he said, "We're not prepared, and no one's prepared for what's on the horizon. And what do we do?" And so it was, we kind of all had to take a break, step back, come back, and say, okay, we've got time on our hand right now, right? Like AI is not ravaging the world as we see it. And it's a year later now, and we still aren't seeing yet this level of attack. So good, right? Like, so we've radically shifted our philosophy. We're prepared for this now. We've been shifting our customers' philosophies and preparing them for it. But like when you look at this, if you're from the 80s and you remember the Terminator series, like that's what weaponized AI is going to do. It's going to sweep across the world in days. It's going to be worst case scenario. And it's really easy to fix if you just start to change now. Like it was not a huge effort on our part to make changes. The tools existed. So it was a pivot point for us.
But zero trust, this is when you started to make the shift in the methodology, and you're talking over a year ago. Zero trust, it's not like there's a zero trust app on, that you install on the network. It's a framework that you can implement over time. Or is it?
Yeah, I mean, there are tools. We didn't ask them to sponsor this webinar, so you have to give us a call if you want to know about the tools. But we have been changing our philosophy, and as you were talking through the difference between like traditional antivirus and zero trust, I had this visual. So I'll tell you this visual. Pretend you're at your house and you have like a 3-year-old child, and everyone's 3-year-old kids love to open the door to someone who's come to visit, right? So like traditional antivirus is your 3-year-old child can open the door whenever they want, and they let anybody in the house they want. And then it's the mom or the dad's job to check everybody in the house constantly to make sure they're not doing anything suspect. And as you can imagine, like that's terrifying, right? You've got like a thief over here and a bad person over there, and they're all doing their thing, and you have to be constantly vigilant. And the likelihood of them doing something before you catch it is really, really high. Versus zero trust is you've got a bodyguard at your front door, and every door and window is locked. And if you're not on the list, you don't get through. And as you can tell, like that's a significantly different level of protection than you would have if your 3-year-old keeps opening the door to anybody that comes by. And so when you recognize like the traditional antivirus that everybody is using today has the effectiveness of a 3-year-old at your front door, that's when you realize like I have to make a change.
Got it. So you talked about you're talking about current antivirus and all of those the tools the traditional tools that you use, security tools. So you're talking about the analogy is a good one. Oh, well, anybody can the 3-year-old can let people in and someone checks once they get in, right? So there's different aspects of different tools, right? Threat detection. So how does AI get by this stuff? Tell me how that works, or doesn't, as it were.
Well, so we were talking about like the threat. Actually, if you want to take that, that's fine.
So like what happens is traditional antivirus looks for recognized patterns that imply that the program is doing something that shouldn't be doing. So there's like a massive database of patterns and behaviors and files that antivirus looks for. And it's just like constantly running after everybody like, oh, do you match this? Do you match that? And it's like it's very reactive. And if it finds a pattern that says, okay, you're out, guy, you're gone, AI doesn't do those things. Like AI, what it does is it exploits vulnerabilities, but it uses the tools that everybody expects to see. So I think we talked about, in one of our practice sessions, like think of your computer network as a fortress, right? You've got the gate that everybody comes through. It's got big, metal bars. You got guards there. They're watching. They're like very vigilant. You've got people along the top with bows and arrows, and they're looking for stuff. And AI it dresses in like the uniform of a maintenance person, and it's at the outside of your fortress, and it finds a crack and it starts to hammer at that crack. And the guard looks over and says, "What are you doing down there?" And the guy says, "Oh, I'm fixing the wall." And the guard says, "Okay, sounds good." So like antivirus and traditional detection methods don't recognize AI because it acts like it's supposed to act. It acts like actually a computer technician. It acts like it's a program that's repairing things. It acts like it. So it uses all these tools that are already considered normal and acceptable. And it just does things with those tools that then gives them power they shouldn't. So like, that's why our systems didn't start detecting the weaponized AI in our network until the very, very end. When it started, then it's like, hey, I got everything I want. I don't care if the alarm's going off because I'm already halfway out the door. And good luck, guys.
So in the past, it was kind of like virus software doing this bad stuff. So we recognize the bad stuff. Whereas now AI is like, well, we're doing inside the network, we're doing whatever everybody else does. And so we can move from place to place, from account to account, and do the things that are normal for that business. And so it can go undetected. And so what you're saying is, we go back to this one. Each of those places inside the network is now, I guess, walled off. That might not be the right term, but it's secure. So if it doesn't know, like it recognize the software you guys use, it recognizes behavior patterns. Kind of like when I go on vacation, my wife and I go on vacation to someplace new we've never been before across the world or other side of the country. The bank goes, "Hey, you can't get access to your account until you verify because this isn't a normal pattern." Is it kind of like
that's a zero trust? That's a zero trust philosophy, right? They've said you're outside of the safe zone and that you need to revalidate that you're legit. And so they make you revalidate.
Got it. Yeah, this is interesting way to think about it. Pretty sophisticated stuff when you're doing it, because basically what you're saying, and I'll go back to Grant here. You're saying that we know what your network does often, or what the people on your network do often. And so if there's something outside of that, but as I say that, it's kind of like, well, then Andrew just said AI does everything that's normal. So how do how do you catch it? Maybe that's the core of what zero trust is.
Right. So you have to train your system, right? You don't just put in zero trust and walk away from it. It's a fairly complex process, not necessarily not from a business owner perspective, but from an IT perspective, we have to go through and understand what's happening in the network to allow it to happen after it's been fully implemented. It's because you don't want to stop business process, right? The business still has to run, but you want to be able to get it so we create a model of how that company looks and how it runs on a day-to-day basis and all the things that happen during those times. And those are all deemed acceptable tasks, right? So and in there, I have tools it's also kind of known as living off the land attacks. There are tools on computers that are just come with the computer. Sometimes it's the notepad, or sometimes it's the command prompt, or all these things function on the computer. But what do they do? Is actually the real question. So I might allow the command prompt to open up and provide some level of information, but I maybe don't allow it to get administrative rights, or I allow the notepad to open, but I don't allow it to turn itself into batch files, right? To be able to run malicious code. And so that's where you start to kind of get like, hey, this application needs to function as designed, even though it can do other things. So if it's outside of the realm, that's when zero trust kicks in and says, okay, this network was allowed to do this, and now it's trying to do this. You need to verify with me that that's okay to happen again. So it is an ongoing process, right? It's not like a set and forget. It is a living, breathing thing that policy is always being adjusted. And so it does require a very specific set of skills to have that happen. And so with these different tools and vendors, that's been figured out, right? So it's not impacting to the business, but we're allowed to be able to continue to have that ever evolving policy grow, but being restrictive on things that are not supposed to.
Well, it seems to me if you have that capability to implement something like that, you guys would have to know, and your staff would have to know, typical business process within that client's business. And if you've had experience with an industry vertical, let's say engineering or manufacturing, or there's typical things that you would already know go on in a business like that, maybe not that specific client's business, but because you have experience in manufacturing or finance or healthcare, you already know what a typical business does. And so once you get to learn the process of that particular client, it's for someone like you guys, it's more easily implemented, let's say.
Correct.
Is that fair to say?
Very fair. Yeah. So there's, like I said, there's definitely a training process that happens. And we've gone through this so many times that we know, for like, if it's a manufacturing, they're going to have this. If it's a professional services, they're going to have these. And then the subtle nuances of that specific company, we're training that process. And so,
sorry to interrupt, but over time, basically you layer in this zero trust policy or security or framework so that things just become more secure, but the business can still operate. It's like, exactly. I need to do this on my computer because I run the CNC machine on the floor. I'm making it up. And so now I'm, Tony, I run the CNC machine and I make sure all of the designs go from from the CAD system to the to the CNC machine to the whatever, and so we can actually get this thing built or cut out for the client. So that's my role and that's what I do. So I can do those things still in the network.
Exactly, but I don't have to allow it to happen on every other computer. Right, because not everybody's doing it on the CNC. So that's kind of the point, is like, just because it happens on the network doesn't mean everyone has to be able to do it. So once again, it's zero trust. Like I'm making sure that every computer is doing exactly what it's supposed to and nothing more.
So even now going through this, I think back to some of the conversations we've had where you've always said this. is that human beings are the weakest link. And so the phishing
No,
stuff
no
that,
offense to anyone out there, but
yeah, not all you humans out there are the
no,
weakest link.
I'm not
Just the other
specifically
ones you were
talking to
talking
you if you're watching this video.
Yeah, the statistics are hard to deny though. Like it is technology is so good for protecting your perimeter, like your internet connection. It's the hackers go after the soft underbelly, which is your staff or your team members.
Yeah. I think it's like the disclaimer we should put on every security video. It's like, pay attention. There's a lot of bad people doing bad things out there. And it's not like they're all going after the CEO either.
No.
They don't have to. And in fact, the CEO, they do go after the CEO, but typically what they'll do is they'll go at some sort of subordinate, and then they'll work their way up, right? So they don't necessarily have to start at the top. They can start leapfrogging, depending on where they got entered. So,
but zero trust makes that much, much harder to do. It's kind of like, what was the term you used, Grant? It's like not a safe box, where it's like where you walk in an open door into a room, and then once you're in the room,
they call them man traps.
Trap.
But you're used to, so they're used at airports, right? So when you're clearing security, you walk through a couple sets of doors. Typically, one of them is always open, and so man traps are designed to control from one spot to the other, right? And you also see those like in clean rooms too, where you're going to go into one room, both doors are shut, and then the other door opens up because you're controlling an environment for some specific reason. And so that's a zero trust principle of like, okay, once you get here, you still have to verify and authenticate to the next door. And then, more as you go on. It's not just, oh, okay, one opens up and then you're able to get access to everything, right? You just have to continue to authenticate.
Right. So let's talk about, this is kind of moving along on a really sophisticated subject, but let's talk about implementing zero trust. You're saying that it looks at the people that use different devices, what data they have access to, the applications they use, where they are, what they do on the network, and how you implement it is knowing all of that about everybody in the business that has access to the network. Or how does this work? How does it happen over time? Maybe walk through it a little bit.
Yeah. So the principle itself. So in this case, we're going to talk about specifically like for devices or workstations, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the overall principle is a mindset. I was saying if people don't need to have access to something, they should, right? And so that's implementing that is different than implementing the technical control of like a workstation. So I want to make sure that people understand that, because like changing your mindset is actually probably harder than me implementing the technology, because you start having to think about like, hey, I should have access to this. My whole staff needs to have access to this, even though nobody ever accesses that data. And you're like, well, in a zero trust, nobody would have access unless they were unless the access was explicitly given to them because it needs to be there for their job. Right. So that's the zero trust principle. And sometimes that's the big hurdle of getting over is you have to change how you think about things. And it's something that we still work with inside of our organization, where I've got engineers that, like, I'm an engineer. I should be able to access all the tools that I need to. And I need full administrative rights to everything in the world. I'm like, but you don't, because you don't actually access that system, nor do you need administrative rights to do so when you do access that system. So why do you need administrative rights, right? So it's a conversation and a mentality that is something that's the bigger hurdle than the technically implementing zero trust for like a workstation or for like a firewall or for data. It's overcoming the mentality.
Well, it feels, it feels a little constraining, but that's just how it feels.
I like to think of it as
so you kind of have to get over that mental hurdle, right?
It's a really well-tailored suit. It might be a little, it's snug, but it moves with you really nicely. You can get your strut on. Don't worry.
Just address the part of that feels constraining. And maybe this is the mentality shift. And
it is.
Like if you're in some industries, you're more prone to, like, let's say finance, or maybe medical, but let's say finance. You're probably more prone to be, I call it security forward. You think that's a key principle we have to have at this company because we're in finance and we handle people's money. Whereas maybe if you're a construction company, you're like, what? We build stuff. Maybe Do you think that's part of the attitude shift?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think, if you look back at like banks, right? Banks haven't necessarily been using zero trust, but they've had been locked down for a long time. And to the point where like you can't install anything or run any applications that, on your computer. And that's been happening for years. But rather than saying, okay, let's work around what your goal is, IT was just like, no, I don't care. We're not going to, that was always the banking mentality. Where the new versions of zero trust are much different. It's like, hey, we can just allow what runs in this environment to run and update and do whatever it needs to. And it's not about like having the workstation locked down. It's just not about having everything open, wide open, right? So it's just it's a very different mentality. But I think your point to like, say like construction, they're like, hey, I just need to build stuff. I just need this thing to work. When you start realizing all these things that you don't need to have and you don't use on a day-to-day basis, that's what zero trust is locking down. It's not locking down your web browser of going to, whatever page. It's not locking down your emails. Your emails are going to function just as they do today. It's all the other dangerous things that you don't use on your computer is what it locks down. So while it is constrained, you're not going to really notice it.
Interesting.
And Tony, so like in IT, zero trust is not like a radically new concept. It's been around for a long time, but a lot of corporate IT departments, even other IT services providers, they have a really hard time adopting it because of the mindset shift, right? And so for us, like we watched IT service provider after IT service provider fail in zero trust implementations for their customers. And what happened was they weren't willing to commit to that philosophy 100%. And so like for what we did, that would made us successful. And this is the secret sauce. So if you're listening, this is how you do it is when you're going to implement a zero trust tool, you find one that's good. And like I said, well, if you want to talk to us, we'll tell you some recommendations we have. But what Grant did, since he was the one implementing it as our security expert, he let the tool run and learn all these patterns and behaviors for months. And we watched it and we really dedicated time to it. And then we rolled it out to one customer at a time. So like every day a new customer came on so we could deal with whatever little stuff popped up. And yeah, every day that we implemented, there was somebody who was like missing something. We quickly fixed it. That's the number one thing is quickly fix the issues. And then within 3 or 4 months, we had it through all of our customers, and people just don't complain anymore because we spent the time up front to build the profiles. Whereas other IT providers, they roll it out really fast. It's not well trained. And then they have this flood of requests that come back. And that's same with corporate IT departments too. And so they just say, oh, can't do this, abandon it, put all the antivirus back on. I'm going to go back to fighting my fires. And they miss that opportunity to really protect themselves. And the reason I'm like, as we come full circle for this webinar, like how is zero trust going to protect you from AI? Is that you have to have a zero trust environment in place that basically says like, you shall not pass, because otherwise AI is going to figure out a way around, right? And so if you have traditional antivirus, it's going to figure out how to get around your controls. It's going to figure out how to get into your systems. And if you don't have everything perfectly dialed in, like you have no vulnerabilities, every patch has been applied, every security best practice, I mean, it's impossible. No one does that, right? And so zero trust is the final answer to AI because it just says, you don't get in unless I know who you are. And AI says, oh, sorry, I guess I'll go get somebody else who's a little easier target. But it's that hurdle, right? The initial hurdle of getting your system really well dialed in and really well trained and committing to it. And it was tough for me to commit to it, but I was telling you, I think yesterday, that I specifically don't have access to the zero trust tool because I want to experience the end user experience. In the last 6 months, I've maybe had 4 events that kind of slowed me down. And every single one of those, I was installing a tool that was like a fairly aggressive tech tool that you could do bad stuff with. And it stopped me. But my normal day-to-day, I don't have any disruption. So like microscopic amount of inconvenience compared to like a tremendous amount of risk reduction. So there's a huge value return for zero trust.
Oh, I bet insurance companies love this stuff.
They're not quite here yet, but they will get here because it only takes so many claims before they realize this is the only way to protect their risk.
Yeah.
I will tell you that I've gone through a few audits with it though, and the auditors leave me alone now. They're like,
You
no,
got it.
I mean, from a client perspective, having an auditor where they're just like, no, you guys are good, don't worry about it. That's a beautiful thing because like normally auditors like they want to if they don't find something, they want to do a deeper dive. But when you start talking about having this kind of levels of security in place, they're like, wow, and keep in mind, our clients are tend to be in that's 25, 50 person range. Like
Right.
auditors are like, people just don't have that type of technology capabilities in this size range. So, we'll toot on our horn for being able to put that in place, but having auditors, kind of give us the blessing has been really nice.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, you said one thing in there that I picked up, and that is, well, two things. One, the system needs to be trained to recognize what people do for day to day so that you can understand that and make that free that up. And then the second one was when you're implementing it, there are things like, let's say Jesse's over there in accounting and he needs access to something. And because we implemented this new zero trust, he can't get access to it. And so there has to be a way to go, hey, I need access to this, and here's why. Like, what's up?
Yeah.
You mentioned being able to respond to that quickly and making sure as you're implemented that you're on top of those things seem like a really important.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a perfect stopgap to the issue, right? So if a user does need, so keep in mind that when you go through the training process, it picks up everything that person's doing, every application, every sort of configuration, anytime that it's changed a page. I mean, it picks up all of that. So the only time that we ever have to deal with like somebody that's not been able to do something and needs to ask for permission means that they've never done it before during the times that's being trained. So if I trained a company for 3 months, that means that employee never did that for 3 months, right? So that's the beauty. Like they do have the ability to ask for that permission, and it happens quickly. That to get them up and on their way. Because if it's something that's pretty straightforward, perfect. But if it's like you have like a junior hacker Andrew that's trying to put on some nasty tech tools, they might need a little bit of a deeper look into it, right? So at that point, some human needs to look at that and say, yeah, do you really need to be doing that? And
Right.
I actually one of the fun ones that I always get is we do have some property management clients, and I've seen it where late at night, 9, 10 o'clock, where there are people on the property management computers. And I'm pretty sure they're like kids of the tenants, and they're trying to install games. And,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so and so they're not even supposed to be in the office. So like maybe like the door was left unlocked and they sit down at a computer and they're just on these computers and they're starting like, and so I'm actually getting these notices and it's saying that, hey, this is trying to, I'm like, that person's not supposed to be there. And so like I'm declining those because they're not supposed to be on the computers. But you get the idea, like it's, I mean, it could have been a virus that they're trying to install. It could have been a game. I mean, who knows? But the fact
Yeah.
that now that they weren't able to do it because they weren't supposed to be able to do it.
Interesting. Well, you bring up another key issue or point. In this modern world, we all can work from home now. I mean, not all of us do. Most, a lot of us go into an office but it's, what do you call it? I mean, you can work from anywhere. So if you have somebody in the office that is traveling all the time, for example, but they are always accessing, it supports that. It's not like it's locked into some building, right?
Correct. Without borders.
Without borders. Yeah, totally. Kind of interesting. So one last thing, and I've heard you use the word train a lot. Are you talking about you physically have training with people, or are you talking about you have a piece of software that is learning what people do on the network, or both? Or talk to me
Both.
about that part.
Yeah. So obviously the training of the staff is, hey, this is if something you're not able to do something, this will be how you remedy that, right? This is how you request to get access. So there is that training that needs to take place. But from the training of the systems, that's more of a learning process, a machine learning process, where watching all the things that happen on the network, all the tools that are being used, the data that's being accessed, and defining, hey, these are normal day-to-day things that should be allowed to happen. And so that's where that's the training that happens.
Got it. No, that makes sense. So I want to leave some time for Q&A. I don't know if we have anybody out there that has any questions. Andrew, if you could take a look at that, see if we have anybody out there that has a question.
Yeah. So Jeff has a question, and basically he said, where do you start your zero trust journey? And so Grant, maybe you can give us some practical suggestions on how you start your zero trust journey.
You call me. So I think it comes down to an assessment, right? Of understanding where you're at, what your goals are that you're trying to achieve. Because like I said, implementing the technical side of things, I highly recommend a professional take care of it that's done it many, many times. I don't necessarily recommend doing zero trust for a medium-sized company if they don't have that technical resource. But I think it's important to have that conversation with management, because that's going to play a large part in the success of the implementation. Right. If management doesn't back the thought process of zero trust, you're going to have a hard time getting it across the finish line if they don't understand the value and why it's being done. So I think you always have to, technical initiatives always have to start at the top and have to have buy off at the top. And then you can start, then there's the motivation to get things done. So I think that's where I would start.
Yeah, I could easily see somebody of the DIY nature going, oh, well, I can research the software and probably find the software and probably, yeah, go ahead, do it, Joe, because Joe's a technical guy at, some business. And the part where Andrew was talking about, like, yeah, we trained it for 3 months, but when we turned it on, it knew a few things, but we didn't do it properly. So we got flooded with all these requests, and it's like, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. I think you get yourself into trouble pretty easily, it seemed like, if you don't know what you're doing.
There's a trick to it, without a doubt. And that's why I said, work with a professional that has done it before and has been successful at it.
Yeah. Qualifier there.
Yeah.
Andrew, any other questions?
Emily has a question, and we may have to just maybe a phone call we have with her, but her question is like, what should a company expect to pay to implement zero trust? And this is a 25-person company. So Grant, I don't know if you want to, if you feel that's an appropriate webinar open question, or if that's a phone call.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably more of a phone call, because it's never just as simple as there's 25 workstations. And I think we do need to have some more qualifiers to that. It's going to come down to, so one, what platform is being used? Is it just for workstations, or is it more of a methodology change? So implementing it at a firewall level, implementing it at a full network level, and then also the training and mentality level. So if it's just a workstation piece, that one's pretty straightforward. You're definitely south of 10K, but or even less than that. So it's that part's pretty easy. But like I said, that's probably more of a conversation, because there's way more to it than just that.
And the last question I see here is from Tony, and this might be like a conversation itself, but basically the question is, we've looked at implementing zero trust before. Ultimately, we didn't go with it. Our organization has challenges with change, and it's like, I get like the mindset change. Do you guys have any suggestions on how to advise leadership on like how to overcome those mindset roadblocks?
Do you want me to take that one? Or do you want to take that one?
Yeah, you can take it.
I would say turn AI loose on their network and then see what they say.
Actually,
there is that, right? And that is once again, going back to management and ownership have to be at the helm, and they have to be having 100% buy off on it, because there will be people. In fact, every time I have some implementation, I do get some person that is like, I used to be able to do this and I should be able to do this. And I'm like, if you were doing it before, it would have popped up in training, right? So I know you weren't doing it until now. But it's ultimately, you're going to have somebody that just, if something's changed and they're upset. I tell you, typically a week after full implementation is done, it just goes quiet, right? and I'm not saying like a week of chaos. Like I'm like saying like a week after, day goes live. I'm like, everything's functioning the day of that you go live. You're going to get somebody that complains because they had a request for access, once or twice in that week. Then after that, it's just quiet. So it depends on who the squeaky wheel is. Tim, you can typically identify that when you start going into that company and start working with them. And they just need some special attention. And excuse me. I always like to have an open conversation and say, hey, you guys can throw rocks at me. Put me up on stage, throw rocks at me. We'll talk through this process, and just understanding that we're there to help them out and to keep them functioning as they are today, but yet protect the owner's interests.
Yeah. So. And actually, Tony, what you said about put the weaponized AI, like that's a really solid strategy. And the reason I think it's a solid strategy is I don't think we have years to get comfortable with this philosophy and make changes. I think we have like maybe 12 months, maybe months before, the bad guys figure out how to do this. And so like, I wouldn't have changed, like we radically changed our company after we ran that weaponized AI. I wouldn't have been okay with it. I would have fought it. I would not have moved forward with it. We would not be where we are today. And I needed something that was indisputable to show how vulnerable we were before I was willing to make a change. So, running a weaponized AI and giving a business decision maker those kind of facts to say, this is how much risk you have and how exposed you are. You now have the choice to live with it or make a decision, I think is really powerful. And actually, like the weaponized AI tools we use, like running one of those is not terribly expensive, right? Like you could hire us for a day engagement. We run it, we give you results, we interpret it for you. And, for a relatively low price, you are now very informed, and it may be what moves the needle. So, although it's the grenade method, I think it's probably a really practical method right now and the time we're at and the evolution of weaponized AI.
Well, I'll add one more thing, because, I used to think, oh, these guys are, what is it? Healthily paranoid, or,
healthy paranoia.
Yeah, healthy paranoia.
Productively,
okay, yeah.
Productively paranoid.
Here's the thing. My LinkedIn profile, I've got like 20,000 followers. It got hacked, and I became, on my LinkedIn profile, and it was me. I made the mistake, and it was like, why would anybody want to hack my LinkedIn profile? Like, why would they do that? And then I started thinking, and just through all the conversations we've had on webinars and videos and stuff, it's maybe not what they're doing right now, but what they could do once they get access to common things. And the fact that, and it's like everything, right? You only need insurance until you need it, right? But man, it feels good when something goes wrong and you have the right insurance. So the fact that you're saying like, hey, AI is doing this out there, there's more and more security vulnerabilities out there. It's just because everybody's using everything digital to do anything anymore. You've got to be online online. So it is something to be thinking about. And you think about like locking down on a personal level, but as your business is where you have a ton of asset, if you run payroll and things. So the fact that even that happened to me makes me think, wow, yeah, this stuff is out there, and it's not going to stop. It's not going to slow down, So I think there's a unique giveaway we have, and that is everybody who's registered for the webinar has been entered to give away a lunch and learn session at their office. Now, this is the time, Grant, you were talking about earlier, like, hey, throw rocks at me on the stage. And I thought, well, does he really want to say that? Because
it's true, though.
Like the old George Bush, like you got a shoe thrown at you. But maybe talk to me about this lunch and learn really quick, that what you guys do, because I think it's great for offices, and it's a great way to get everybody immersed in something. And you guys do it on multiple type subjects, right? Multiple topics.
Yeah. So our two popular ones are one about AI, and the other one is typically the security one. And so I've got a couple different security ones that I'll do. The one that I find that's probably the most popular is like the 13 cybersecurity tips that are mostly free. I've been doing that one for years, and even did a a ebook on that. But I find that that's the one that really starts to kind of, I'm able to kind of point out things that people are doing every single day that, hey, hackers know what you're doing, and this is how easy it is to get through. And so, yeah, it's really up to whoever wins. We can cover whatever topic they want to, but those are the popular ones that really have some thought-invoking questions that come afterwards. And I think that's the important part, is that when the staff start to engage and ask questions about, hey, something I said to them kind of hit home. So that there's some power to that.
And I put the QR code on here because if you want to learn more, you can actually register for this. I think you guys normally do it every quarter. Once a quarter, you pick somebody, but you can register to be put on the list. So if you don't win, you can go scan this QR code and register and put your name on the list. And that's a good way to get there. We've had, I think, people register a few times before we ended up selecting them, which is kind of cool. I think, and this is a hint, if they see your name multiple times, they'll probably pick you. But we don't make it hard for people to connect. Let's put it that way. Anyway, no. This was great, guys. This was great. This zero trust thing is kind of interesting to me. There's so much sophistication in it, but also it's simple. It seems like. So this will be on our YouTube channel. Subscribe, scan the QR code, hit the like button, hit the bell, crush the bell, whatever they call it. Yeah, definitely check out the Lunch and Learn. It's a really, really valuable thing. Your whole staff gets lunch. You get it paid for. You get educational credits, I think, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. You're actually able to get CPEs for that, or continuing professional education credits.
Yeah. So it's a really good deal. Anyway, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. All the great information.
Awesome.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.